She stood in a kitchen that cost more than her nephew's entire down payment, watching a buyer walk out in under 4 minutes. 40-something thousand dollars in repairs, 8 months of contractors, dust, and delay. And still, no offers she could take seriously. She was sure she had done everything right. That's exactly what worries me, because the 10 repairs I'm about to walk you through are the ones sellers spend money on almost automatically in 2026, convinced they will pay off. Most won't. Some will actively hurt you, and one, the one everyone recommends, may cost you the sale entirely. Her name isn't important. What matters is that she's a retired widow in her 60s, in a solid mid-tier suburb where 3-bedroom homes from the 1970s sit inside a very specific price band. And she did what most sellers convince themselves is the responsible thing. She looked at that band, looked at her house, looked at the newer listings competing with her and thought, I have to close the gap. So she started with the kitchen, full remodel, new cabinets, new counters, new tile, new lighting. The contractor was thrilled. Her sister-in-law was thrilled. Every neighbor who wandered by was thrilled. Here's the part nobody said out loud. Her neighborhood has a ceiling. Every neighborhood does. And the moment you spend $30,000 plus on a kitchen in a house that tops out at a certain number no matter what you do, you are not raising your ceiling. You are lowering your net proceeds. That is the first repair on our list. A full kitchen remodel right before you sell. I understand exactly why sellers do it. Kitchens sell houses, you've heard it 1,000 times. And it's not wrong exactly. A tired kitchen absolutely turns buyers off. But there is an enormous difference between a kitchen that photographs well and a kitchen you just paid for. Buyers do not walk in and say, oh, that quartz was expensive, let's add $28,000 to our offer. They walk in and say, nice kitchen. Then they check the price. Then they compare. That is the entire process. And in that process, your renovation invoice does not appear anywhere. So before you sign a contract with a kitchen designer, please sit down with someone who knows what your bracket actually rewards. Here is what I saw when I finally walked through the house, 8 months in. The kitchen looked genuinely lovely. The rest of the house did not match. The bathrooms were mid-project. She had gutted the primary bath and started the hall bath, and both were sitting there half done because the money for the kitchen came out of the money for the bathrooms. That is the second repair I would ask you to pause on, a full bathroom gut renovation right before listing. Refresh is not the same as gut. A refresh is new caulk, a fresh coat of paint, a new mirror, updated hardware, a deep clean, and maybe reglazing a tub. That kind of care signals, this home has been loved. It costs a few $100s. It photographs beautifully. It makes buyers relax. A full gut sends a completely different message when it's mid-construction. Buyers walk in, see the taped-off doorway, see the exposed subfloor, and their brain does not think, oh good, they are renovating for me. It thinks, what else is unfinished? What will I inherit? What is behind that wall? You have introduced fear into a transaction where you were trying to introduce confidence. Once the new cabinets were in, the old refrigerator looked wrong. So did the range. She replaced both. Beautiful new stainless. Which brings us to repair number 3, replacing functioning major appliances just to match your renovation. The old ones worked. Buyers were not going to reject the house over a 5-year-old fridge. But now she was another $4,000 deeper into a sale that had not happened yet. By the time I met her, the house was listed. It had been on the market for 6 weeks. Showings were happening, technically. Real bodies were walking through. But something was wrong, and she could feel it, and she could not name it. Here's what she said to me. I don't understand. The kitchen is done. The appliances are new. My realtor keeps saying we need patience. But I've been packing boxes for months, and I am so tired. And then she said the sentence that told me everything. She said, "Do you think I need to finish the second bathroom before we get an offer?" That is where I want us to pause. Because that question, that instinct to keep spending in order to solve a problem you cannot yet see, is where sellers lose the most money. Not on the first repair, on the repair that comes after the first repair failed to fix things. Before I answer her question, I want you to notice something about the driveway. I spotted it before I ever went inside. The lawn was fine, the shutters were fine, but the entry walkway had a subtle dip, and the porch light was burnt out at 2 in the afternoon. It didn't matter for the sun, obviously. It mattered for the photos. That was my first clue. Her money was inside the house. Buyers were making decisions outside the house. And that gap between where sellers spend and where buyers judge, is the pattern behind almost every one of the 10 repairs I'm walking you through. Which brings us to repair number 4. Replacing a roof that still had life in it because a neighbor said it looked aged. Her roof was 15 years old. Asphalt shingles, no visible damage, no active leaks. But she had been told by 3 people in a row that buyers won't touch a home with an old roof, so she was ready to spend $12,000 to replace it before listing. I stopped her, and I want you to hear this because it matters. A roof that is functional, documented, and not currently leaking is not the same as a roof that scares buyers. What scares buyers is uncertainty, and uncertainty is often solved by an inspection report, not a $12,000 replacement. Now, I have to be honest with you. Roof rules vary. Some insurers in some states will not write a new policy on a roof past a certain age. And if buyers in your area are getting denied coverage on 20-year-old roofs, that changes the math completely. That is a question for a local agent and a local insurance rep, not a national YouTube video. But please do not replace a working roof because a friend said you should. Ask specifically. Are buyers in my price band and my zip code being turned down for insurance? If the answer is no, keep your $12,000. Here's the other thing about roofs. Buyers who filter listings do not filter by roof age. They filter by price, which is our next problem, and the reason so many of these repairs backfire in ways sellers never see coming. Repair number 5. Repainting the entire interior in a color you love. This is where sellers get creative, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but creative is exactly the wrong word. I've walked through homes with sage green bedrooms, navy dining rooms, terracotta kitchens, one very memorable purple hallway. Sellers picked those colors because they wanted the house to feel special. They wanted buyers to walk in and go, wow. And buyers do go, wow. They just don't go wow in the direction the seller was hoping. Here's the hidden assumption. Sellers think fresh paint equals good paint. It does not. Fresh paint in a bold color is a message. It says, the current owner has strong opinions about this room. And a buyer, standing in a room that already reflects someone else's personality, has to do 2 mental jobs at once. First, imagine themselves living there. Second, imagine the cost and labor of painting over it. Both jobs create friction. Friction reduces offers. Neutral wins, not white necessarily. Warm off-whites, soft grays, quiet tans. Boring, yes. Boring sells. If your interior is already a reasonable neutral and clean, do not repaint the whole house before listing. Touch up scuffs. Move on. If your walls are personal or scuffed or a strong color that made sense in your life but will not photograph as calm, then yes, paint. But paint smart. One color for most of the house, same trim throughout. Let me show you a completely different kind of seller because the contrast matters. This is a common pattern I see with inherited homes. Someone loses a parent, inherits a modest house, panics, and asks, what do I need to do before I can even list this? And the answer that most people whisper to them is, everything. New floors, new paint, new kitchen, new landscaping, update the fixtures, Modernize the light switches. Repair number 6 is landscaping. Full landscaping overhauls right before selling. New sod, expensive plantings, mulch beds, decorative stone. Sellers do this because curb appeal is real. And it is real, but it is not the same as curb spending. A pressure-washed driveway, a clean walkway, trimmed hedges, mowed lawn, dead branches removed, a swept porch, and a working porch light will do most of what a $5,000 landscaping project does. For maybe $200 in labor and a Saturday. I've watched inherited home sellers do almost nothing besides clean, declutter, and shoot honest photographs, and outperform sellers who spent $40,000 trying to make the house look brand new. The inherited home seller was not trying to trick anyone. The buyer knew exactly what they were getting. No mismatch, no unfinished renovation, no fear. Meanwhile, back at our widow, she had not touched the front walkway. Not once. All of her money was in a kitchen buyers would not see for several minutes into the showing. The cheap curb appeal wins, the ones that actually change a buyer's mood before they open the front door, she skipped. Repair number 7, refinishing hardwood floors or replacing flooring at a level your price band cannot repay. I want to slow down here because this one is deceptive. Flooring is one of the few things buyers genuinely notice fast. Bad carpet in a family room, scratched, dull hardwood in the living areas, peeling laminate in the kitchen. Buyers do see it. So the instinct to fix it is not wrong. What is wrong is the level of fix. There are 3 questions I want you to ask, and I want you to ask them out loud, in this order. Does this make the house look better? Does this make the house easier to sell? Does this return more money than it costs? These are not the same question. Brand new engineered hardwood in a house whose comps have builder-grade carpet may photograph beautifully, but it may not raise your appraised value at all. Appraisers work from comps. Buyers work from filters. Neither one automatically gives you your money back on premium flooring in a modest neighborhood. If your carpet is stained beyond cleaning, if it smells, if it's actively repelling buyers in photos, replace it. But replace it with something reasonable for your bracket. If your hardwood is scratched and dull, a good screen and recoat may cost a fraction of a full refinish and get you most of the visual result. Ask your agent, specifically. Has anyone in this neighborhood recently listed with the flooring I'm considering, and how did their sale compare? That's the question. Not, should I do it? The question is, did the last person who did it get their money back? Repair number 8 is where I might start an argument, but I'm ready for it. Full window replacement right before listing. You have heard forever that new windows are a huge selling point. And in some homes, in some climates, with some buyers, they are. But that sentence has 3 qualifiers in it, and most sellers ignore all 3. Here is the reversal. In a lot of markets, buyers do not walk into a home and say, "New windows, thank goodness." They walk in and say nothing about the windows at all, because functional windows are the baseline. What buyers actually react to is drafts, condensation between panes, seals that have failed, sashes that will not stay up, and rotting frames. Those are real problems. Fix those. But replacing 18 functioning windows for a marketing bullet point that says new windows, when your existing windows work and pass inspection, that is often $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 you will not see back at closing. Energy efficiency rules, insurance requirements, and certain tax incentives vary by state and by year. In some regions, buyers are absolutely factoring energy costs into their decision. In others, they aren't. Talk to a local agent about whether new window listings in your specific area are actually pulling more offers or just costing more to prepare. Because the pattern I keep seeing is the same pattern our widow was living. Sellers spending on the thing they were told mattered. Buyers reacting to the thing that actually did. Let me bring you back to her house. because by the time I was standing in her living room, I could see the full picture, and it was worse than she knew. Her kitchen was newer than the countertops in the master bath. Her master bath was half done. The hall bath was untouched. Her flooring was mismatched. Engineered wood in the kitchen, older carpet in the bedrooms, tile in the entry. She had spent at that point north of $40,000, and the house looked, honestly, like 3 different homes were living inside it. That is repair number 9, smart home and tech add-ons that read as gimmick, not value. She had added a smart thermostat, a video doorbell, a smart lock on the front door, and she thought these would signal that the house was modern. What they actually signaled, in combination with the mismatched renovations, was the owner made a lot of small decisions, and I don't know which ones I inherit. But the deepest problem was not the tech. It was that her improvements had pushed the home into a search band it did not belong in. Her original price, based on where her comps were, would have put her in front of one group of buyers. Her renovated price, chasing her spending, put her in front of a completely different group. That new group saw the mismatched bathrooms, the half-finished projects, and the odd flooring transitions, and immediately compared her house to genuinely turnkey homes in that same bracket. She lost every one of those comparisons. Her listing photos, meanwhile, were dark. That was the first thing I would have fixed. It cost nothing. This is the part I dreaded telling her, because when I sat down and said, "You need to stop spending, you need to reprice, you need to reshoot the photos, and the second bathroom stays how it is," she almost cried. She said, "But my husband wanted this house finished." I want to acknowledge that, because it is real, and it is not silly, and it is not only about money. When someone you love had a vision for a house, letting go of that vision feels like a small betrayal. When you have already spent $40,000 in that direction, admitting the strategy was wrong feels like admitting you wasted his memory. That is the emotional resistance no spreadsheet accounts for. And then there was the contractor. He was still standing at the kitchen counter pitching her a sunroom. That is repair number 10. Room additions, sunrooms, garage conversions, and layout changes right before selling. Additions are one of the very hardest categories to recover on. Sunrooms almost never appraise the way sellers expect. Garage conversions frequently reduce buyer pool because buyers in most brackets still want a garage. A converted bedroom is often worth less than the bedroom it replaced. I told her, please stop signing contracts. She said, but then what do I do? I said, 2 things. We reprice into a search band that matches where your house actually competes. And we fix the front walkway light, we reshoot the photos, and we let the half-done bathroom be visibly, honestly half-done in the disclosures. That is it. No more sunroom, no more windows, no more appliances. Nothing. Her hands were shaking. I understood that. Here is what I want you to understand about repricing. It is not surrender. Repricing is a search visibility strategy. Every listing site has price filter brackets. Buyers set them. If your home is priced at, let's say, $389 and the natural bracket below you ends at $375, you are invisible to every buyer whose top is $375. Not almost invisible. Invisible. Repricing to $374, in that scenario, is not a $14,000 concession. It is a decision to be seen by a new group of humans. That was the practical adjustment. Reprice into a real bracket. Fix the porch light, pressure wash the walkway, trim the shrubs. Reshoot the photos with a real photographer, not a phone, and at a time of day when the light in her living room actually worked. Leave the hall bath alone. Disclose the half-done master bath honestly, with a note that the seller would consider a credit at closing rather than complete the work. Was there risk? Of course. She might get low offers. She might get an inspection request that hurt, but every one of those risks was smaller than the risk she was actually running, which was carrying this house for another 6 months while making mortgage, insurance, and utility payments on a home that had already eaten her preparation budget. If she ignored the evidence and kept spending, one of two things happens. She runs out of money before the house sells, or she finally sells at the same price she would have gotten weeks earlier, minus every dollar she spent in between. Both of those outcomes are worse than a repriced, honestly presented home. The house went under contract about 4 weeks after we changed the strategy. Not overnight, not in a bidding war, not for a dramatic number. But it went under contract. The buyer was a younger couple who price filtered into her new bracket and did not compare her to genuinely turnkey homes. They saw a home that had been cared for, understood that the master bath was mid-renovation, and asked for a modest credit at closing. She gave it. Her net proceeds, after everything she had already spent, were not what she had hoped when she started this project. I want to be very clear about that. This is not a story that ends with, and then she made more than she expected. She lost real money on that kitchen. She lost real money on those appliances. She lost real money on the 8 months of carrying costs. But she moved. She moved before the market shifted underneath her again. She moved before her savings ran out. She moved before she had to sit through another 12 weekends of showings in a house that was making her genuinely sick with stress. I don't tell you this story because it is universally reproducible. Every neighborhood is different. Every price band is different. Every seller's timeline is different. Local inventory, seasonality, and buyer pools in your zip code may make one of my 10 repairs the correct decision for you. That is why the phrase, "talk to a local agent," is not lazy advice. It is the whole point. But every seller I have watched over the years has one thing in common. They spent the most where they felt the most, not where buyers were actually looking. So let me tell you what I actually want you to take from this before you close the tab. If you are thinking about selling, please, before you write a single check, sit down with someone who can pull comps in your specific neighborhood and tell you honestly what buyers in your bracket are actually rewarding this year. Not last year. This year. Not nationally. In your zip code, ask them specifically, which of the 10 repairs I just walked you through are recovering right now for homes like mine, and which ones are not? Ask them what your search brackets look like. Ask them what your photos will need. Ask them what the buyers in your range are asking about at showings, and what they are walking away from. Those questions cost nothing. The answers can save you tens of thousands. Do the cheap things first. Clean, declutter, fix visible maintenance issues, address safety and disclosure items, take honest, well-lit photographs, price into a real bracket. Do those things before you consider a single big renovation. In most cases, you will discover that the big renovation was not needed. In some cases, the cheap fixes will reveal exactly which one big project actually earns its keep. You do not need a perfect house. You do not need to defeat your buyers. You do not need to spend the most to net the most. You need to understand which decisions actually move a buyer from scrolling past your listing to standing in your living room, and then from your living room to a signed contract. She thought a new kitchen was going to save her. What actually saved her was one honest conversation about what buyers in her price band were really looking for, and the courage to stop spending. That is the whole game.